Well, Donald Trump is making his way to Florida ahead of an appearance before a federal judge on Tuesday. The former president faces a 37-count indictment for mishandling classified documents after leaving the White House. He was busy over the weekend speaking at several rallies. And Trump, here was what he had to say.
The joke of an indictment, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing for this country. I mean, the only good thing about it is it's driven my poll numbers way up. Can you believe that? Way up.
So it's not incorrect. The fresh CBS News and YouGov poll shows him topping Maine GOP rival Ron DeSantis by 38 points and holding his grasp among GOP voters in general. A separate poll asks if his indictment was politically motivated. Most surveyed said it was. A poll from ABC News and Ipsos has 48% of respondents saying the DOJ was correct to charge him, while 35% disagreed. Joining us to discuss what could happen next, criminal defense lawyer Brian Wice. Great to have you here today. First and foremost, of the charges that you've been able to look through and what we've seen so far, what does the defense look like?
You know what? My clients have an expression when they find themselves jammed up, much like the former president. They say, wow, cancel Christmas. I don't know if the former president has to cancel Christmas, but Brad, make no mistake, he is in a world of hurt. As anybody who's ever watched Billions understands, Paul Giamatti, the Chuck Rhodes character, loving to berate potential defendants by telling them, you shouldn't have made a federal case out of this. Why? Because as your viewers understand, the federal system is as radically different from most state systems is night from day. First of all, defendants plead guilty 98% of the time. Those foolhardy enough to go to trial are convicted 98% of the time. They do 90+% of their time. And viewed against that backdrop, like you said, Brad, 37 counts, 49 pages, more pictures than I've ever seen in any indictment in 45 years. But what makes this indictment what we call a speaking indictment, an indictment that tells a narrative with the beginning, middle, and an end, is that, Brad, this indictment is chock full of this defendant's own words, own admissions, and more than that, what we call consciousness of guilt, his intent to hide, conceal, lie, and destroy evidence.
Let me ask you, though, Brian, as cut and dry as it may seem, it's going to take a while, right? Talk us through the process here. It's not as though he gets arraigned tomorrow and then he goes to prison a week later, right? This is potentially, what, a months-long, if not years-long process.
Julie, you're absolutely right. Look, even though every defendant in the federal system has the right to a speedy trial, this is a marathon. This isn't going to be a sprint. And I think one of the reasons why we need to be in for the long haul is District Judge Eileen Cannon, who we all know from very early on in this process, she was allegedly picked at random to hear this case. She could do everything in her power to put a stick in the government spokes, so to speak. How? By delaying this trial, by suppressing critical evidence, and by even going so far as to grant what we call a directed verdict at the end of the government's case in chief, meaning she's found as a matter of law, the proof is insufficient. Now, I think what's going to be important is the fact that Judge Cannon, who apparently seemed to be auditioning for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals last year, was, as they say in West Texas, called out like a punk by the 11th Circuit for just being wrong from here to there. But we know, guys, that like a home plate umpire in Game 7 of the series, she can squeeze the strike zone on the government. And that's something I really think we're going to have to keep a watch on as this case unfolds with the first step tomorrow in federal court, guys.
What does it say to you that Trump's defense team, and this was the kind of shocker on Friday, that they stepped away from this case? What do you believe had to be seen within the case itself to be so detrimental for them to say, you know what, we're out?
Well, Brad, that's a great question, because I think what we've seen over the years with this defendant is that being a lawyer can be hazardous to your health, hazardous to your profession, and hazardous to your law license. Look, you had Jim Trusty, you had John Rowley step aside, you had Tim Parlator step aside before them, and now he's become a talking head on TV who's on more than Andy Griffith reruns. Look, this is a situation where not every well-paid, high-class lawyer wants to involve himself or herself. Look, my understanding is that the president will now add Todd Blanche, a former AUSA in the Southern District of New York, again, from Billions, who has assisted on the New York case. But I also think what our viewers need to recognize is, speaking of that New York case, the difference in gravity, in severity between that New York case that Alvin Bragg brought and the ones that Jack Smith has brought in the Southern District of Florida. Again, it's like going from JV football on a Thursday night to the Super Bowl like that, guys.
Well, is he going to have to settle for some JV attorneys, though, if, right? Because, as you say, if this is as serious a case as you say, and the risks for his defense attorneys are, as you say, then who's he going to get to defend him?
If we as criminal defense attorneys, particularly what I do as an appellate lawyer, the lawyer of last resort, Julie, if we only took cases we thought we could win, if we only took cases where we thought we were going to get really good results and be on Yahoo and on page 1 of the Wall Street Journal above the fold, we'd be working at Dave & Buster's because we wouldn't be taking any cases. There's always going to be someone somewhere who, like a moth to a flame, is attracted to the prospect of representing the former president in federal court. But make no mistake, what begins on Tuesday, the first step in a journey of 1,000 miles for this former president, is going to be something that could result, again, in substantial prison time. When you break down the 37 counts of this indictment, 31 counts of violating the Espionage Act, 5 counts of concealing or possessing government documents, and then 2 counts of lying with his body man, Wally Nalto, to the FBI, you're looking at 5 years apiece on each of the espionage counts, 20 years a pop on concealing or possessing, and 5 years a pop for lying. Again, we've said it before. There's a reason why no one ever wants to be defendant in a federal criminal case, guys.
Well, we'll see what ends up being the outcome of this one. Brian Wice, thank you very much. Criminal defense lawyer, giving us some perspective here on the Trump case.